Chief Emmanuel Adebayo stood frozen in his bedroom doorway, his heart pounding like thunder in his chest. The papers in his trembling hands told a story that made his blood run cold. Bank statements, secret phone messages, and photos that showed his wife Sandra kissing his best friend James behind his back. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing that if he had gone to that business meeting 3 days ago like he planned, he would be dead right now. Dead. And the only reason he was still breathing was because of Grace, his poor housemaid, who everyone treated like she was invisible. 3 days ago, Grace had grabbed his arm with tears in her eyes and begged him not to leave the house. "Sir, please don't go today. I had a bad dream about you. Something terrible will happen if you go." Everyone had laughed at her. Sandra had rolled her eyes. James had called her a foolish village girl. But Emmanuel had listened. And now, holding these shocking papers in his hands, he knew that Grace had saved his life in ways he never imagined. But let me tell you how it all started. 2 weeks earlier, Chief Emmanuel Adebayo was the happiest man in Lagos. He owned Sunshine Properties, the biggest real estate company in Nigeria. His houses were so beautiful that even government ministers wanted to buy them. He had more money than he could count, 3 fancy cars, and a mansion in Victoria Island that made people stop and stare. Everyone called him Chief, because he was so successful and respected. Emmanuel lived with his beautiful wife Sandra, who always wore expensive clothes and jewelry. She had long, shiny hair and a smile that could light up any room. They had been married for 5 years, and Emmanuel thought she loved him with all her heart. He bought her anything she wanted: designer bags from London, gold jewelry from Dubai, and even a pink Mercedes-Benz just because she said it was pretty. His best friend James was like a brother to him. They had grown up together in the same neighborhood when they were poor. James now worked as Emmanuel's business partner and handled all the company's money. Emmanuel trusted James so much that he gave him the keys to all the company bank accounts. "We are like blood brothers," Emmanuel always said. "What's mine is yours." In their big house, there was also Grace, a quiet housemaid from a small village. Grace was only 25 years old, but she worked harder than anyone Emmanuel had ever seen. She woke up at 5 a.m. every morning to clean the house, cook meals, and wash clothes. Sandra always shouted at Grace for small things like using too much soap or taking too long to iron clothes. James barely looked at her when he visited. To them, Grace was just a poor village girl who should stay quiet and do her work. But Emmanuel noticed something special about Grace. She never complained, even when Sandra was mean to her. She always had a gentle smile and would ask, "Sir, are you okay? You look tired today." Sometimes, Grace would say strange things that later came true. Like when she told Emmanuel, "Sir, don't eat the fish today. My stomach feels bad when I think about it." That same day, the fish seller in the market was arrested for selling spoiled fish that made many people sick. One Monday morning, everything started to change. Grace came to Emmanuel's office looking worried and scared. Her hands were shaking as she served him his morning tea. "Sir," she said quietly, "I had a very bad dream about you last night." Emmanuel looked up from his newspaper. "What kind of dream, Grace?" "I saw you in a big car accident. There was blood everywhere and you were calling for help, but no one could hear you. The dream felt so real that I woke up crying." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, please be very careful when you drive today." Emmanuel felt a cold shiver run down his back. Grace's dreams had a strange way of coming true, and this one scared him. He decided to let his driver take him everywhere that day instead of driving himself. That evening, when Emmanuel came home, Grace was waiting by the door with an even more worried look on her face. "Sir, I had the same dream again, but this time it was worse. I saw you go into a meeting and something very bad happened. Please, sir, don't go to any meetings tomorrow. Stay home and be safe." Sandra heard this and got very angry. "Emmanuel, why are you listening to this foolish girl? She's just a maid. Her village superstitions have no place in our modern life. You have important business to handle." James, who was having dinner with them, laughed loudly. "Chief, don't let a village girl control your life. We have that big meeting with the investors tomorrow. We can't cancel it because of a dream." But that night, Emmanuel couldn't sleep. Grace's words kept playing in his mind like a broken record. He had learned to trust her strange feelings, and something deep in his heart told him to listen to her this time too. The next morning, as Emmanuel was getting dressed for the meeting, Grace came to his room one last time. She fell on her knees and grabbed his hands. "Sir, I'm begging you. Don't go today. I can feel danger around you like a dark cloud. If you love your life, please stay home." Looking into Grace's honest eyes, Emmanuel made a decision that would change everything. He called James and canceled the meeting. What happened next would shock him to his core and make him realize that Grace had saved him from more than just danger. She had saved him from the people he trusted most. The phone call came at exactly 11:30 a.m., the same time Emmanuel was supposed to be at his meeting. James's voice was shaking on the other end. "Chief, thank God you didn't come to the meeting. Something terrible happened." Emmanuel's heart stopped. "What happened, James?" "The building where we were supposed to meet, it collapsed. A big truck crashed into it during construction work. 3 people died, Chief. 3 people. If you had been there." James's voice broke. Emmanuel dropped the phone. Grace had been right again. Her dream had saved his life. But as he sat in his study that afternoon, thinking about everything, strange questions started filling his mind. Why did James sound more nervous than sad? Why hadn't he called immediately after the accident? And why did Sandra seem so quiet when she heard the news? That evening, Emmanuel decided to do something he had never done before. Instead of talking, he started watching. He watched how Sandra and James looked at each other during dinner. He watched how they both seemed uncomfortable when he talked about the accident. He watched how they kept checking their phones and exchanging quick glances. Grace served dinner quietly, but Emmanuel noticed how she kept looking at Sandra and James with worried eyes. After dinner, Grace whispered to Emmanuel, "Sir, be very careful. Not everyone in this house loves you the way they pretend." The next morning, Emmanuel told Sandra and James that he was going to Abuja for business and would be away for 3 days. But instead of traveling, he parked his car far from the house and snuck back through the back gate. What he saw next made his world crumble like a house of cards. Through the window of his own sitting room, he watched Sandra and James kissing passionately on his favorite sofa. They were holding each other like lovers who had been apart for years. Emmanuel's legs became weak, and he had to hold the wall to stop himself from falling. But it got worse. Much worse. "Finally, that fool is gone," Sandra was saying to James. "I'm so tired of pretending to love him." James laughed coldly. "Soon we won't have to pretend anymore. Once we finish transferring all the money from Sunshine Properties to our secret account, we can disappear to London and start our new life together." Emmanuel's heart broke into a million pieces. The woman he loved with all his heart was stealing from him. The friend he trusted like a brother was betraying him. For how long had this been going on? "What about that stupid maid?" Sandra asked. "She keeps looking at us strangely. I think she suspects something." "Grace? She's just a village girl. Who would believe her if she said anything? Besides," James smiled wickedly, "after Emmanuel has his accident, it won't matter what she knows." Emmanuel's blood turned to ice. "Accident? They were planning to kill him. You're sure the brakes on his car will fail next week?" Sandra asked. "I paid the mechanic well. When Emmanuel drives to his next meeting, the brakes won't work on that steep hill near the bridge. It will look like a tragic accident. Then you'll inherit everything as his wife, and we'll be free to be together." Emmanuel couldn't breathe. They weren't just stealing his money, they were planning to murder him. And they had been planning this for a long time. The business meeting that Grace warned him about wasn't just dangerous because of an accident, it was dangerous because they had set a trap for him. Suddenly everything made sense. James had been insisting so much on that meeting. Sandra had been angry when Emmanuel listened to Grace. They needed him to go to that meeting so their plan could work. But Grace's warning had ruined everything for them. Emmanuel quietly took out his phone and recorded everything they were saying. He had all the proof he needed. As he listened to more of their conversation, he learned that James had been stealing money from the company for 2 years. Sandra had been having an affair with James for even longer. They had been laughing at him behind his back, calling him a fool for trusting them so much. When Emmanuel finally had enough evidence, he quietly left the house and drove to the police station. He gave them all the recordings and the evidence of James stealing money from the company. That evening, when Sandra and James were having dinner and celebrating their evil plans, the police arrived. Emmanuel walked in with them, and the look of shock on Sandra and James's faces was something he would never forget. "You thought I was a fool," Emmanuel said calmly. "But the real fool is someone who betrays people who love them." Sandra started crying and begging for forgiveness, but Emmanuel's heart had turned to stone. James tried to run but was caught by the police. After Sandra and James were taken away, Emmanuel found Grace in the kitchen, washing dishes with tears in her eyes. "Grace," he said softly, "you saved my life in more ways than one. How did you know?" Grace smiled sadly. "Sir, God shows me things in dreams when people I care about are in danger. I could see the darkness around them, but I could also see that you have a good heart. Good people deserve to be protected." Emmanuel gave Grace a big envelope filled with money, enough to buy her own house and start her own business. "This is not a gift," he said. "This is what you earned by saving my life." 6 months later, Emmanuel rebuilt his company with honest people who truly cared about him. He found new love with a kind teacher named Ruth, who loved him for his heart, not his money. And Grace? She opened a small restaurant in her village and became successful. But sometimes when other people were in danger, she would still have those special dreams. Because some people are born to be guardian angels for others. Emmanuel learned that the greatest treasures in life are not money or big houses, but honest friends and people who truly care about you. And sometimes, the most important person in your life might be someone everyone else ignores, like a poor maid with a gift from God.